Hello my dear friends, here in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 31st of October of 2025. Today we have lots of very interesting and very important updates, so let's start. Since the beginning of this morning, the President of Ukraine Zelensky has made lots of very interesting and sometimes very crazy statements. Let's discuss them in details. Zelensky invented the idea that Putin wanted to come to Pokrovsk and was threatening him. Putin wants to come to Pokrovsk, please, but everyone understands how this will end, Zelensky said. Also, the President of Ukraine Zelensky stated that there will be long-range strikes on the Russian Federation in the near future. We have identified priority targets together with the heads of the SBU and the Foreign Intelligence Service. We will definitely implement everything. Furthermore, Zelensky stated that in 2023, Ukraine managed to destroy one of the Oreshnik missiles on the territory of the Kapustin Yar. Furthermore, he stated that the situation is stable around the city of Pokrovsk, and he added that Ukraine is about to win the special military operation and capture half of the Russian Federation. So lots of statements were made by Zelensky, so very difficult to understand whether he was serious or not, but we understand why he was saying this. Because the Russians are advancing along the entire line of combat contact, and furthermore, the Russians are about to capture completely the Pokrovsk agglomeration. And during the previous 24 hours, as you can see, the map has been changed significantly. We have lots of changes on the ground, but probably today the changes on the ground are not the most important part of the situation around the city. So once again, Russians are saying that the Pokrovsk agglomeration was caught by Russians in Killzone without any chances for Ukrainians to escape this situation. But Zelensky is saying that everything is okay, the situation is difficult but stable. And you know that today the Russian special group Rubicon, this one, published a very interesting video. This is the wrong word, probably a very interesting video. It's better to say probably very, I don't know how to call it, but let's take a look at this video and probably we will understand what I'm trying to tell you. So what can we see in this video? We can see attacks, a lot of FPV drone attacks, and as you can see, the Russians this time were attacking not vehicles, not artillery systems, not tanks, not infantry fighting carriers. The only thing we can see is dozens of strikes on Ukrainian soldiers. Later, the author of this video stated that all these episodes, all these attacks took place exactly in the city of Pokrovsk, more precisely not in the city itself, but in the area of Breakout, in the northwestern part of the city, so right exactly at this black area. So later, they published this video and they published this on their Telegram channel. And here we can see the timings. So as you can see, every single 3 seconds, Russians during this video published another episode how they were attacking manpower. So this video shows us that during the previous night and probably during all previous nights, the Ukrainians were trying to escape Killzone on their own without vehicles through, let's say, tree lines, through brushes, through forests, through fields and so on, and Russians were attacking them. And during just that video we could see how Russians destroyed probably several hundreds of Ukrainians that were trying to escape the Pokrovsk agglomeration during the night. So this is the situation, and this is a total disaster for the armed forces of Ukraine. At the beginning of this squadron there were around 5,500 soldiers. Most likely by the end of the battle for the Pokrovsk agglomeration, Ukrainians would lose around 70 or 80% of their soldiers. Putin proposed to Zelensky a ceasefire to allow Western press to enter this territory, most likely with the purpose to show Ukrainian soldiers and probably to give them a chance to survive. But Zelensky and Ukrainian authorities rejected this proposal. They decided to try their luck and to escape this area during the night, and we saw what's happened. And we need to understand that the next nights, this upcoming night, the nights, tomorrow nights will be much more difficult for Ukrainians, and at some point there would be no chances for evacuation. We believe that a lot of Ukrainians will surrender, but not today, not tomorrow. We expect that in 5 days we're going to start receiving updates about a significant number of Ukrainians surrendering to the Russian soldiers. Now let's discuss the changes. As you can see, the map has been adjusted significantly. This is the situation by the end of the 30th of October, and this is the situation by the end of the 31st of October. The Russians, as you can see, answered the northeastern part and the northern part of the settlement of Mirnograd, but the Russians are not advancing significantly, so they're moving, they're trying to tighten the noose around the settlement, but the Russians are not answering. And the reason is that the main number of Ukrainian forces is located exactly at this area. So that's why the Russians are not moving further. They try to create, let's call it like this, like a comfortable situation for Ukrainians. They're trying to give them time to think whether it's better to surrender or to break through in the northwestern direction and to suffer dozens of Russian drones attacking them, as we've seen during, let's say, a few minutes ago during this video. Very difficult to say. But as for the city of Pokrovsk, we see that Russians control around 80% of the settlement. They have established almost complete control over the territory. Once again, this is the situation by the end of the 30s, and this is the situation by the end of the 31st. So Russians secured this residential area and managed to get to the northern outskirts of the settlement without any resistance, almost without any resistance from Ukrainian side. The distance between positions is less than 2 kilometers. Some sources are saying that the distance is around 2 kilometers. According to, if summarize everything, the distance is almost less than 1 kilometer, so it's impossible to break through this territory. Furthermore, the sources began reporting that Russians began advancing in the northwestern direction outside the city of Pokrovsk, and the sources are saying that first Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups answered the southeastern part of the settlement of Grishna. This information was provided by different mappers and different experts, by pro-Russian and neutral, mainly Ukrainians, and pro-Ukrainian sources reject everything about this area. We believe that this was something like an order from Ukrainian authorities to stop panicking and to stop spreading this information. Now, every single, let's say, expert from Ukrainian side is tasked to talk just that everything is okay with the city of Pokrovsk, and this is a normal situation because now the extraction operation is ongoing, and it is very important from Ukrainian side to let's say, at least not to panic. This is very important. So this is the reason, and this is what exactly the Ukrainians are doing right now. They're trying to tell everything that everything is okay because now there is an extraction. Ukrainians are trying to escape the squadron, suffering huge losses, and this is the reason why Zelensky is so mad and upset. And obviously during the next days, everything depends on the results of the squadron. During the next days, we might see attacks deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation with cruise missiles. Ukraine will attack energy facilities, warehouses, and ammo depots, but the main problem is that Russia most likely will strike back, and Ukraine can suffer even more losses in comparison with the Russian side. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but obviously the situation is very interesting, and the situation is going to be over very soon. Now let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, where the Russians are planning to create another cauldron, and this time the cauldron for the city of Gulyai-Polye. As for the previous 24 hours, the most important updates are coming from the settlement of Novoalexandriivka. This morning, the pro-Russian sources published this video, and they stated that as a result of offensive operation, Russians managed to capture the settlement of Novoalexandriivka completely. So in this video, we can see lots of episodes where Russians were bombing, basically reducing the settlement to ruins, trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back without showing any resistance, and Ukrainians fell back without showing this resistance. In the final part of this video, we can see at least 3 episodes when Russians in different parts of the settlement raised the Russian flag. So once again, this is the situation by the end of the 30th of October of 2025. We just start receiving the first reports that the Russians approached the settlements of Novoalexandriivka and the village of Gai, and by the end of the 31st of October, we colored this entire territory. We understand that Russians will continue advancing further, at least in the western direction, towards the villages of Gai, Vidradna, Andreevka, Ostapovskaya, Danilovka. Everything is very simple. The logistic was ruined by Russia. This is an example of ruined logistic of the armed forces of Ukraine in this area. The bridge, let's say, along the river of Volcha in the area of the settlement of Pokrovsky was completely destroyed without any chances for Ukrainians to bring additional reinforcements and reserves. So Ukrainians will not be able to show any resistance. Maybe the villages of Alexandriivka and Dobropasna will be able to show some resistance because these two settlements are very close to Pokrovsk. So just with FPV drones, Ukrainians will be able to slow down Russians. But the Russians are not tasked at this stage of the special military operation to move further. The main task is to cut physically Air 85 road and then to advance further in the southern direction towards the settlement by the name of Gulay Polya. And we are going to see this in coming days. Russians will begin offensive, and furthermore, during the previous 24 hours, pro-Ukrainian sources also provided us very interesting changes on the map. This is the situation, for example, by the end of the 30th of October of 2025, the Russians had just one settlement under their control on the Ukrainian side of the river Yanchol. We're talking about the village of Novonikolaevka. And today, pro-Ukrainian sources adjusted the map, and according to these latest changes, the Russians managed to improve their positions, let's say, in the main part of the city of Uspenovka. So the battle for the Uspenovka fortified area has begun. The Russians are advancing, and according to, let's say, experience and according to the previous examples, we believe that in 5-6 days the village of Uspenovka would be captured, and with the fall of the village of Uspenovska, Russians will begin their major offensive operation in the direction of the city of Gulay Polya. Probably within 3 months, maybe even less, within 2 months, we're gonna see that everything along this red line would be taken by Russians, and this is going to be the situation with another cauldron when the city of Gulay Polya would be encircled from the north, from the east, from the south, and from the southeast. Russians will try to get as close as possible to Zalizhnechny. They will establish complete FPV drone control, and then we're gonna see everything we saw during the battle for the city of Pokrovsk and everything that we still will see during the battle for Siversk or Kupiansk. Another important piece of news is that Russians, according to information we have, entered the settlement of Novopavlovka. This information was published today by pro-Russian sources. As of now, we don't have proofs, we don't have videos that can confirm this, but we believe that this is the situation on the ground. We see that Ukrainians don't have enough of manpower, enough of forces to stabilize the situation. They don't have enough of FPV drone operators to replace, let's say, stormtroopers and infantry. So that is why the Russians can attack any way they want, any place they choose, and most likely Ukrainians will not be able to show any resistance. The only problems that Russians have probably is also manpower. If Russians have additional 100,000 or 200,000 soldiers, most likely the progress on the ground would be much faster in comparison with the current situation. So this is the map by the end of the 30th of October, and this is the situation by the end of the 31st of October. Russians improve their positions, and Russians continue offensive operation in the southern part of Novopavlovka. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous days, a lot of changes were recorded, and during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions, first of all in the southeastern part of Konstantinovka, and the Russians began outflanking Ukrainian positions on the territory of the settlement of Ivanopolia. We expect and we believe that in coming days or in coming hours, the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from the territory of the settlement because they are at a very big risk of being encircled by Russia. So most likely Ukrainians, with the purpose to save personnel, will try to retreat in the western direction towards the settlements of Berestok and the southwestern part of Konstantinovka. This will allow Russians to maintain the lines and to shorten the distances like this, and then Russians using broad frontline attack will continue offensive operation in the direction of the city of Konstantinovka. So let's wait and see what is going to be next, because Russians, they have enough of time to begin the Konstantinovka offensive. Most likely let's say the most important parts of the battle for Konstantinovka will start only after the end of the battle for the city of Pokrovsk and the Kupiansk, and probably even the city of Siversk. Now let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Siversk. During the previous 24 hours, we had lots of important changes. So as you can see, the Russians launched their major offensive operation, and according to all these changes and according to this dynamic and according to direction of all these changes, we can say that Russians are tasked to establish complete control over the pockets between railways and over the settlement of Zvanovka. Russians are focused to answer the city of Siversk from the south and to collapse collapse and to destroy Ukrainian logistics in this area. So I'm not sure that Ukrainians are able to use this TO513 road anymore. We believe that this territory is already under complete Russian fire control. Furthermore, if you remember, during the previous days, we received lots of attacks, Russian attacks along this line. So Siversk is falling very slowly, but falling inside of another encirclement, and this will be finished probably within months and a half. Now let's discuss the situation in the area of Liman. The Russians continue their offensive, and today several sources reported that Russians, as a result of attack, managed to take under complete control the Maslakivka microdistrict. This is already the most eastern microdistrict of the city of Liman. So this information confirms that the clashes are already taking place on the territory of city. Furthermore, the Russians are trying to outflank Ukraine positions in the territory of the village of Stavki from behind. The Russians are advancing, trying to force Ukrainians to fall back. We believe that Ukrainians will begin retreating from this area in coming hours, because if Russians can enter this stronghold, Ukrainians would be caught in cauldron. So that is why it's time, maybe this upcoming night, to begin retreating along this road in the direction of the northern part of the city of Liman. As for the villages of Drobyshevo and Novoselovka, nothing interesting happened there during the previous 24 hours. Now let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Kupiansk. As you can see, we have lots of very important updates and we have huge changes. So this is the situation by the end of the 30th of October. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation just stated that the settlement of Sadovo was captured by Russians, that Russians managed to establish almost physical control over the main supply lines to the west of the city of Kupiansk-Uzlovoy. And today, by the 31st of October, the Russians stated, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that Russians are about to finish the battles and are about to finish the clearing of the settlements of Petropavlovka and Kurilovka. So based on the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, for better understanding of the situation on the ground, we decided to add this gray zone. So once again, Russians stated that they're about to finish clearings of Petropavlovka and Kurilovka, which means that in 1 or 2 or 3 days they will officially announce about complete control over these territories, and then we will color everything to the east of the city of Kupiansk under complete Russian control. So, and this is the cauldron, that's what the Russians were talking about. So this is the area where Ukrainians were encircled, and this is the area where the Russians are advancing every day. According to different mappers, the Russians crossed the river Voskol and began advancing in the central part of the city of Kupiansk that used to be under control of the armed forces of Ukraine. So this is the situation by the end of the 30th of October, and this is the situation by the end of the 31st of October. First, Russians will try to capture this territory, and then Russians will begin or will continue offensive operation further in the direction of the settlements of Kupiansk, Uzlovoy, Kovsharovka, trying to force Ukrainians to fall back from this side of the river Voskol. If the front line in the Kupiansk direction falls, and most likely it's just a matter of time, Russians will be able to continue advancing further in the western direction with the purpose to cut completely the most northeastern part of Kharkiv region. Furthermore, and the most important, Russians from these positions will begin advancing in the direction of the city of Izum, because only with control over the city of Izum and this bridgehead, Russians will be able to attack the cities of Kramatorsk and Slaviansk from behind, which most likely is going to take place in 2026. So, according to just probably simple logic, in 2026, probably maybe during the or by the end, Russians will be able to finish the battles for Slaviansk and Kramatorsk, but not earlier. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.